I was 11, sitting in my dad's truck while he was working, playing on my Nintendo DS as we drove on the highway. Out of nowhere, he slowed down and said, "Oh shit, he's gonna crash into that pole." On the other side of the road, a truck was swaying back and forth. Then it suddenly drove straight into a concrete bridge pole. I still remember the sound and pieces of wood flying everywhere, even toward us. If my dad hadn't slowed down when he did, it could have hit our windshield. My dad started freaking out a bit and told me to stay in the truck while he went over to help. But I didn't fully understand what had just happened, and I got curious. After a minute, I decided to follow him. At first, I just saw debris scattered all over the road. Then, I saw the truck, completely destroyed. That's when I started to feel nervous, because I realized what I might see. When I got closer, I saw the driver. And he didn't even look human anymore. His face was red and purple, covered in blood. Instantly, I got that feeling, a chill down my spine. My body went cold even though it was summer. My hands got clammy and my throat felt tight. I only saw it for a few seconds before my dad noticed me and pulled me aside, saying, "Didn't I tell you to stay in the truck?" That image stuck with me for a long time. First time and last time I ever saw a dead body in real life. This was in the late 80s or early 90s. I was around 6 or 7 years old. I was at home with my sister, who was 14 or 15 at the time. We grew up in a small town in Texas, where everybody knew each other. We were home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me frequently. We always got along due to our age gap. Anyway, it's about 8 p.m. in the winter. Deserts get pretty damn cold, so it is dark and we are in the common room since that is where the TV was. Watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or Hard Copy or some shit. Those 1-hour news pieces on CBS that chronicle large crimes in depth. Trafficking, murders, kidnappings and the like. Basically a gritty Lifetime special. This one was a typical story. Guy next door that was quiet went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their young daughter. Well, the thing about our house's common room is the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it unless you have the backlight on, which we did not. The front door is on the other side of the room with a small entryway. This is a solid door, so you cannot see what is behind it, with the glass storm door on the outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, they are talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and the front door bangs like crazy. We jump the fuck up and scream like banshees. Dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are the kitchen down the hall from the common room we were in, and the light from the TV. We started thinking something on the porch had simply blown against the door. We had some planters and a rocking chair out there. This was West Texas. Crazy strong winds out that way. Well, a minute or two of silence, and us holding each other post-adrenaline overdose passes. Just when we're about to declare everything is safe, we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Fuck. Someone had to have opened the door to be able to bang on the front door like that. We are both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor when we had been watching TV. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which does with a mildly loud thunk. That is just us in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed, sitting frozen with my sister crouched by the TV, but we kept making eye contact and looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. I'm on my knees, sitting on my feet, and I turn around to look at the back wall of windows and glass door. We hear and I see the back door knob turn. It was locked on the knob but not deadbolted. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us makes a sound, just held breath. Then, loud as hell as someone is trying to force the door open, just jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently, and I can see with each jerk of the door how my slight reflection gets fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. My sister flips her shit and screams bloody murder. I'm still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can find in front of the door. Thankfully, she had remembered the phone, one of those ungodly heavy beige plastic long metal antenna portable phones. We still had to direct dial the sheriff there, and in her panic, didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends, and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into our house and needs to get there right fucking now. The profanity sticks out here more than anything else. Who knows? Young brain. I'm curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friend and her parents driving up to the house. We never did find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening, but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like that has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure we never forget to lock a door after that. I don't usually tell this story because getting lost sounds like a lapse in judgment. People assume you're incompetent, but I've hiked the wooded mountains near where I live since I was 12. I know the elevation changes, the landmarks, and exactly where the cell service drops. But on this occasion, I really have no clue what to say. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd gone out for a quick 4-miler to clear my head. Around 4:30 p.m., the atmosphere just shifted. You know that feeling when the wind dies down completely and the woods get so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat? That's what happened. I reached the creek bed where I usually turn back, but the trail wasn't there. There was just a wall of overgrown briars and hemlock. I figured a small slide had covered the path, so I turned around to head back the way I came. 10 minutes later, I hit the briar wall again. I stopped. I'm a rational person. I told myself I'd just done a loop without realizing it. I checked my phone. Dead. Not low battery dead, but black screen won't respond to the charger dead. That was the first time I felt the cold crawl up my spine. I started walking faster. I wasn't following a trail anymore. I was just trying to keep the setting sun on my left shoulder. That's when I heard the dragging. It sounded like someone was pulling a heavy canvas bag through the dry leaves. Scratch, thump, scratch, thump. It was perfectly paced with my own footsteps. If I sped up, it sped up. If I stopped, there was half a second delay, scratch, and then silence. "Hey!" I yelled. My voice didn't echo. It felt like the trees were absorbing the sound, muffling it. I broke into a run when I saw the first charm. It was a bundle of sticks tied together with what looked like dental floss hanging from a pine branch. Then I saw another, and another, dozens of them swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. I don't know how long I ran, but I eventually burst into a clearing. In the center was this thing. It looked like a hut made of gray, dead wood, but there was no door, just a hole at the bottom. And then I saw it. Lying right in front of the hole was my own keychain, the one with the chipped blue carabiner and my gym tag. I reached into my pocket. My keys were there. I pulled them out and stared at them, identical in every scratch and dent, then looked back at the ones on the dirt. The dragging sound started again, but this time it was coming from inside the mound. I didn't stay to compare keys. I ran until I hit the black top of the county road, nearly getting hit by a passing truck. I didn't even go back for my car that night. I hitched a ride to the nearest gas station and called my brother. This is the part that keeps me up at night. The next morning, I went back with the police to get my car. It was sitting right where I parked it. Nothing was touched, but when I got home and emptied my pockets, I found 2 sets of identical keys. I took the second set, the ones from the woods, and threw them into a nearby river. But sometimes, when it's very quiet in my house, I hear that scratch thump sound coming from the hallway just out of sight. I think whatever was in that mound followed the keys home. So I've never actually posted this anywhere before because honestly, just thinking about it makes my stomach turn. But I see a lot of people sharing their close calls on here, and I feel like I need to get it off my chest. This happened about 2 years ago, and I still haven't really gotten over it. It was a Thursday night. I was out with a group of friends at this dive bar downtown. We stayed way too long, drank way too much, and by the time we finally called it a night, it was almost 1:30 in the morning. It was pouring rain, just totally miserable outside. My friends all piled into an Uber to head uptown, and they offered to drop me off, but I lived literally 6 blocks away, like a straight shot down a super familiar avenue. I told them to save the $15 and that I'd just walk. Worst mistake of my life. Seriously, never do this. The first couple of blocks were fine. I had a good buzz going, so I didn't really care about the rain. But once I crossed 4th Street, the city just went dead quiet. No cars, no music from the bars, nothing. Just the sound of my own boots splashing on the wet sidewalk. And then I started hearing a second set of footsteps. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. You know how when you're walking alone at night, every little sound makes you jump. The footsteps were perfectly timed with mine. When I stepped, they stepped. So, to test it, I did that thing where you randomly break your stride. I took 2 quick steps and just stopped dead in my tracks right under a street lamp. The footsteps behind me didn't stop instantly. They took one more heavy dragging step before freezing. I looked back. Maybe 30 or 40 yards behind me, right at the edge of the light, there was this guy. He was wearing this massive, dark, heavy coat, the hood pulled way down so you couldn't see his face. He wasn't looking at a phone, he wasn't pretending to wait for someone, he was just staring right at me. Instant adrenaline. The alcohol completely wore off, and my heart started hammering against my ribs. I tried to act tough. I called out, "Hey, can I help you?" Nothing. He didn't move a muscle. I turned back around and started walking again, way faster this time. My legs felt like jelly, but I didn't want to sprint because I was terrified that if I ran, he'd run too. I kept glancing at the dark storefront windows to my right, using the reflection of the glass to see behind me. In the reflection of this bakery window, I saw him. He wasn't walking anymore, he was matching my pace, taking these huge, freaky strides and closing the distance fast. I panicked and reached into my pocket for my phone to call 911. Nothing there. My heart dropped. I checked my other pockets. Empty. I realized I must have left it on the bar counter. I was totally alone, no phone, at almost 2 a.m. At this point, I had 3 blocks left to my apartment. I decided to take a sharp right onto Perry Street, which is this narrow side street with lots of trees. It was just a shortcut to my building. The second I rounded the corner out of his line of sight, I just bolted. I ran as fast as I could, but then I heard him behind me, and he wasn't walking anymore. I could hear the fabric of his coat whipping around and his boots pounding the pavement. He was sprinting full tilt after me. He knew I knew. I practically threw myself up the stone steps of my apartment building. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely function. I fished the keys out of my pocket, my mind totally blanking on which key opened the front deadbolt. I looked over my shoulder, and he was already at the bottom of the steps. In the porch light, I finally got a look at his face under the hood. It wasn't a face. He was wearing one of those creepy flesh-colored plastic theater masks. The kind that looks vaguely human, but has those hollow, dead-looking slits for eyes. And the worst part? He wasn't even heavy breathing. He was completely silent. "Get away from me," I screamed, jamming a key into the lock. It didn't turn. He took his first step up towards me. I swapped keys, crying, completely terrified I was about to die on my porch. I shoved the next key in, twisted it, and thank God it turned. I threw myself inside the lobby and slammed the heavy glass door shut just as a gloved hand smacked against the glass. The lock clicked. I fell backwards onto the tiled floor, just sobbing and hyperventilating, looking up at the door. The guy didn't try to kick the door in or rattle the handle. He just walked up and pressed his face right against the glass pane, flattening the nose of that creepy plastic mask. He just stood there for a solid minute, watching me lose my mind on the floor. Then, really slowly, he pulled something out of his pocket. It was a phone. My phone. He tapped the screen to light it up and turned it toward the glass so I could see it. He had my Photos app open. He scrolled past a couple of pictures my friends took of me earlier that night, and then he stopped on a photo I had never seen before. It was a picture taken from outside the bar window, looking in. It was a photo of me laughing at a table, completely oblivious, taken from the dark street just an hour earlier. He had been watching me the whole night. After he had made sure I saw it, he put the phone away, turned around, and walked down the steps, completely casual, disappearing into the rain. I called the cops from a neighbor's place, but by the time they got there, he was gone. Because of the gloves and the fact that it was raining, I guess they couldn't get any fingerprints off the door handle or the glass. And since my phone was turned off immediately after he left, they couldn't track it. Like I said, this was 2 years ago. I ended up breaking my lease and moving halfway across the country. I live in a building with a 24/7 doorman now because I'm too traumatized to live on the ground level. I don't go out late anymore, and honestly, whenever I'm walking anywhere and I hear footsteps behind me, I still get this sickening feeling that the creepy masked man is standing right behind me. I need to get this off my chest. I've never posted on Reddit before, but I've been reading these boards for years, usually late at night when the insomnia hits, and lately, it's been hitting hard. For a little over a decade, I worked as a private investigator. When people hear PI, they think of Sam Spade or Thomas Magnum. The reality is 90% boredom, bad diner coffee, lower back pain from sleeping in a Honda Civic, and catching cheating spouses. It's not glamorous, but it paid the bills and I was good at it. 4 years ago, I took a case that seemed like standard fare. A well-to-do woman hired me to find her estranged husband. She suspected he was hiding assets and living a double life before their divorce was finalized. She gave me a list of his known associates, his vehicle details, and a general area where she thought he was spending his weekends. A rural, heavily wooded county about 2 hours north of the city. It took me 3 days to track his SUV to a dilapidated farmhouse sitting at the end of a long, unpaved driveway. The property looked abandoned. The roof of the main house was caving in, and the yard was a graveyard of rusted farm equipment. But about 50 yards behind the house was a large corrugated metal barn that looked recently reinforced, complete with a heavy-duty padlock and blackout curtains on the few small windows. I parked my car a mile down the road, hiked through the dense tree line, and set up a blind. It was mid-November, freezing, and the sun set by 5 p.m. I had my Nikon with a high-powered telephoto lens and a thermos of black coffee. The plan was simple. Get photos of the husband, identify whoever he was meeting, and go home. Around 11 p.m., a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. It was the husband's SUV. He pulled right up to the barn, killed the engine, and got out. I readied my camera. He wasn't alone. Another man stepped out of the passenger side. I snapped a few photos, but it was too dark to get a clear ID on the second guy. They unlocked the barn and went inside. A sliver of pale fluorescent light spilled out from the slightly ajar door. An hour passed. No movement. My curiosity, and frankly my impatience, got the better of me. I broke the cardinal rule of surveillance. I left my secure vantage point and moved closer. I crept through the tall, dead grass, my heart pounding. I reached the side of the barn and pressed my back against the freezing metal. I slowly edged my way to the window where the blackout curtain had a slight tear in the corner, maybe half an inch wide. I put my eye to the gap. The inside of the barn was entirely gutted and lined with thick, translucent plastic sheeting, floor to ceiling. In the center of the room was a stainless steel surgical table, tilted toward a drain in the concrete floor. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the back wall. Pinned to the plastic sheets were dozens, maybe hundreds of driver's licenses, necklaces, rings, and Polaroid photographs. It looked like a macabre trophy wall. The husband and the second man were standing by the table. They weren't talking about hidden bank accounts. The husband was calmly, meticulously laying out an array of heavy-duty tools, a reciprocating saw, bone shears, and thick rubber aprons. Then, the second man walked over to a large, industrial chest freezer in the corner. He opened it up and pulled out a heavy, black garbage bag. It was shaped unmistakably like a human torso. I stopped breathing. The reality of what I had stumbled into crashed over me like a wave of ice water. I wasn't looking at a cheating husband hiding money. I was looking at a disposal site in a slaughterhouse. As I watched, paralyzed by sheer terror, the husband looked up. He didn't look at the table. He didn't look at his partner. He looked directly at the tear in the curtain. Directly at my eye. I've never felt a jolt of primal panic like that in my entire life. I dropped away from the window just as I heard a sharp, aggressive shout from inside, followed by the heavy thud of footsteps running toward the barn door. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I sprinted into the tree line, crashing through brambles and dead branches, the thorns tearing on my face and jacket. I heard the metal door of the barn slam open. I heard a harsh voice yell, "Over there!" I ran until my lungs burned and I tasted copper in the back of my throat. I didn't use my flashlight. I just blindly navigated by the faint moonlight, terrified that at any second a hand was going to grab the back of my coat. I finally reached my car, threw myself inside, and didn't even turn on the headlights until I was 3 miles down the highway, pushing 90 miles an hour. I called 911, screaming at the dispatcher to send every unit they had to that farmhouse. I drove straight to the state police barracks. I gave them my statement, handed over the memory card for my camera, and waited in a sterile interrogation room for 6 hours. When the detective finally came back in, his face was ashen. By the time the tactical team had arrived at the property, it was engulfed in flames. The husband and the other man were gone. The barn, the plastic sheeting, the freezer, the trophies, all of it was destroyed in a massive chemical fire that burned so hot it melted the metal siding. They found fragments of human bone in the ashes, enough to confirm at least 5 different DNA profiles, but the fire had destroyed almost everything. The husband's SUV was found abandoned at an airport 2 states over a week later. Neither he nor the second man has ever been found. I closed my agency the very next day. I sold my house, moved across the country, and got a boring corporate security job. But every time I close my eyes, I still see that heavy black plastic bag. And worse, I see that man's eyes, looking right through that tiny tear in the curtain, staring straight into mine. If you think you know someone, you probably don't. And if you ever find yourself looking into a place where you don't belong, pray to whatever God you believe in that nothing looks back.